Hey there, my name is Harrison Greenough. I'm a realtor in Maryland, and I'm making a video series here to help you guys figure out how to put in a really strong offer and, in general, what the offer contains, and explain each document so that you fully understand it before you sign those documents, and to help, for example, buyers and sellers that are working without an agent to understand them, because ultimately, although I am a real estate agent and I write these contracts every day, I want you guys to have the ability to understand them even if you aren't using an agent. So look through our videos, rewind them, replay them, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly. Thanks, and let's get started. So now we're going to look at the general addendum to the contract of sale, which is included with all residential contract of sale contracts in Maryland. So you can see here we have a number of different items. You'll have the contract of sale date. That's the date of the original offer, the buyers, the sellers, and the property address. So number one, legal requirement. A contract for the sale of real property is required to be in writing for it to be enforceable. If it's not in writing, it's not enforceable. It is legally binding, and parties have the right to sue if something goes wrong or something is not fulfilled. Second is intended use. This is that there are restrictions for each property based on the covenants of the local ordinances. For example, if Maryland has a general law and Baltimore City in Maryland has a more specific law, the more specific law will apply as in most regulations. 3. Settlement. This essentially states that everyone, all parties, should be present and ready to sign at settlement, and there are responsibilities of each party to provide the information to the settlement servicer to assure that the transaction closes. 4. Ground rent. If a property is subject to ground rent, this will be recorded in the land records and must be dealt with on the seller's end. So if there is ground rent that needs to be paid, the seller will be responsible for that. If the property does not have ground rent, that would not apply. 5. Rental. If the property is to be rented out by the buyer, there is a yearly registration fee in certain areas that you will have to apply and have for the safety and regulation of the tenancy of the property. If you're not renting it, this doesn't apply. 6. Equal housing opportunity, a must. So this is the federal laws and the code of ethics by the National Association of Realtors to treat all parties in a non-discriminatory manner. 7. Homeowners Association and condominiums. These are specific addenda that will be added to the offer when it is finalized that have to be disclosed by the seller. These must be disclosed by the seller, and the contract's not valid unless they include these documents. 8. Covenants and restrictions affecting property. A majority of homes that are newly built, for example, many of the newer built homes are part of a homeowners association. There are covenants and specific rules that are more specific per each condo association or homeowners association. Those rules apply specifically to the buyer once they take possession of the property. So be sure you look into this before you purchase. 9. Private agreements. Some communities may have private restrictions, covenants, for example, private property, things like this. You need to be aware of these agreements before you purchase. 10. Wetlands, waterways, and or floodplains. This is important because if your property that you will be purchasing is in a floodplain like this, there are designations and things you will need to include in your offer or sign off on or check with the title company or the government locally to see if you are on a floodplain, if this is going to be an issue. So be sure to check into that beforehand. 11. Reforestation. If the property has more than 40,000 square feet of land, it is advised to look into this and look into the grading and the sediment control permits on the property and any local ordinances, any local submissions that have been put by the city to make sure that there aren't any issues, especially if it's a forest area that may have different restrictions on it by the government. 12. The Chesapeake Bay critical area. If the property is located within 1,000 feet of tidal waters in the Chesapeake Bay, there may be restrictions, and you should definitely find those restrictions if the property is categorized as that. If your property is not in the Chesapeake Bay critical area, this will not apply to you. 13. The Baltimore-Washington International Airport Notice. Some properties, such as Odenton and around Crawford, these areas are, nearby examples of properties that are close to an airport, and you will hear planes flying over you, and you need to be aware of that. You can't buy it and then the next week say, I can't get any sleep. So be aware of that. 14. Insurance. The buyer acknowledges that as a condition of making a mortgage loan, lenders may require proof of hazard insurance coverage and may also require flood insurance coverage. Pretty self-explanatory. 15. Property condition. The home inspection. If the appropriate contingency is included in the contract, which it may or may not, there are oftentimes inspections that will be required for the loan. If their property is falling apart, the bank will likely not grant a loan. So you need to be aware that inspections and evaluations by various inspectors and electrical, and they may be necessary to close the loan. 16. Private water and sewage systems. If you're using a well and septic, that's one thing. If you're on public water and sewage, that's another thing. Be aware which one you are and how that applies to you. There may be assessments on public water supplies. If you have your own septic system, that may not apply, and you may need to have more inspections, for example, to make sure that those water and sewer lines are not damaged. 17. Environmental considerations. Hazardous materials, hazmats. The brokers and their agents, or the other people you're working with in their transactions, may not know about these hazardous materials, so be aware that you should have these inspected if this is a concern for you. 18. Fire retardant treated plywood. This is a roof sheathing that may result in the loss of wood strength through thermal degradation. You need to be aware that if this is the case, that is something to consider in your purchase agreement. You may want to have additional a roof inspection, or you may need to double check to be sure that everything is currently up to code, because again, if it's not, you may need to take care of that down the line, and it may be at your expense. Radon. This is in certain parts of Maryland, especially like Frederick and Washington counties. I found that there often will be radon issues, so have a radon inspection if you're concerned about it. There are studies that have shown that extended exposures to high levels of radon can adversely affect your health. This is to warn you and let you know that if it concerns you, you should have it inspected. 20. As we discussed in another video, lead paint. If the property you're purchasing is built before 1978, you need to be aware of this, because if the lead paint is ingested or touched or things like this, especially with younger children, it may be a cause for concern because it is poisonous. So be sure to look into this, especially if you have young children, but in general be aware that anything built before 1978 does have this issue. 21. Asbestos. This was used for insulation, fireproofing, acoustical, and decorative purposes. They are often found around boilers and pipes. It was very effective, but unfortunately there were some health risks that came along with it. So be aware of this and have this inspected as well if it concerns you. 22. Availability of limited warranty. You may be able to purchase a warranty through the brokerage or through any company that offers home warranties. Be aware that not all things will be covered in the warranty, so look through the contract carefully. 23. Newly constructed residences. This is a big thing. The new home warranty plan that will come with that new home. Be sure you read through this. There are requirements by law that these home builders have to be sure that the property is safe to live in. But there may also be water and sewer, for example, water and sewer assessments that as a result of building these properties and connecting it to the public lines that may fall on you. So if there are assessments, you need to be aware of those because they can be quite high sometimes. 24. Certifications. Depending on the type of mortgage you apply for, as we said before, there may be certifications by inspectors necessary to be sure it is free of hazardous conditions, as the bank, again, wants to be sure that they get their money back eventually. So we have to be sure that the property is safe. 25. FHA prepayment. FHA regulations specify that if a loan is paid in full on the first day of a month, interest for that month is not payable. But if the loan is paid in full on any other day than the first day of the month, interest may be payable through the end of that month. 26. Notice fax transmissions. This is a little bit antiquated, but essentially anything that is hand-delivered or faxed, and now, though it's not stated in this number, even e-transmission of electronic signatures and things like that are valid. So because something is faxed or e-signatures, these are valid. So you need to be aware that these types of transmissions are valid, in fact. And then we have the date and buyers and sellers signatures. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions or you would like to talk about potentially buying or selling a property, please feel free to contact me. My information is below and I would love to reach out to you and talk. So feel free to contact me and have a great rest of your day.